There are some betrayals that don't arrive like a storm. They arrive like a whisper, a look that lingers too long, a silence that feels too heavy, a truth sitting in the room before anyone has the courage to say it out loud. And sometimes, the most devastating part of heartbreak is not the lie itself. It is the moment you realize your spirit already knew. Because long before the words were spoken, before the picture was revealed, before the cameras caught the shock on her face, something inside her had already been sounding the alarm. She just prayed she was wrong. But on that day, hope ran out. What was supposed to be another controlled sit-down turned into something far darker, far messier, and far more painful than anyone in that room was prepared for. This was not ordinary reality TV drama. This was not a petty argument. This was not old gossip being recycled for attention. This was the kind of revelation that cracks trust wide open in front of the world. And at the center of it all stood a woman who had already survived public humiliation once before, only to be dragged back into the fire again. Because when Jasmine asked to speak privately, nobody expected the conversation to end with another child, another secret, and another devastating question. How much betrayal can one woman survive before she stops calling it love? By the time Rasheeda was approached, she had already been trying to keep herself composed. She had been focused on rebuilding, on protecting her peace, on making sure her name stood for more than pain. She had done what so many women do after being embarrassed in public. She kept going. She smiled when she had to. She worked when she was hurting. She pushed through. From the outside, it may have looked like strength. But strength does not mean the wound is gone. It just means you learned how to carry it without bleeding where everyone can see. So when a producer slipped her a note saying Jasmine wanted to speak with her privately, her first reaction wasn't panic. It was exhaustion. What now? That question alone says everything. Because when somebody has brought chaos into your life before, you do not brace for closure when they call your name. You brace for damage. Still, something about that moment felt different. The energy was colder. The atmosphere was too still. Even the room itself seemed to know something ugly was about to happen. When Rasheeda walked in, the cameras were already waiting. 2 chairs, bright lights, nowhere to hide. Jasmine was sitting there, tense, distracted, visibly shaken. She wasn't wearing the smugness people might have expected. She looked like someone carrying information too heavy to hold. Rasheeda sat down carefully, arms folded, patience already thin. "You called me in here, so say what you need to say." And right there, before the truth even came out, the emotional balance of the room shifted. Jasmine looked up with watery eyes and started with the kind of sentence that almost always means pain is coming. "I'm not trying to hurt you." But the cruel thing about betrayal is that it rarely introduces itself honestly. It often disguises itself as concern, as protection, as delayed honesty, as "I didn't know how to tell you." Rasheeda wasn't interested in soft language. She had already lived through too much of that. So when Jasmine hesitated, she cut right through the fog. If this was about old rumors, old texts, old mess, then there was nothing left to discuss. But this wasn't old mess. This was new. Jasmine reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. And inside that envelope was a photograph. Not a screenshot. Not a message. Not some vague receipt that could be explained away. A child. A little boy with features so familiar they didn't need explanation. The same smile. The same eyes. The same unmistakable resemblance that can make denial feel ridiculous in an instant. Rasheeda looked down and froze. That kind of silence is hard to describe. It is not ordinary silence. It is the silence of the brain refusing to accept what the eyes just saw. It is the moment reality and disbelief collide so violently that your body goes still before your heart catches up. Then came the words that changed everything. Jasmine told her the boy was allegedly Kirk's second child with another woman. Not another rumor. Not another accusation floating around online. A child. And suddenly the room was no longer a room. It became a graveyard for every promise that had ever been made, every apology, every attempt to move forward, every time trust had been rebuilt brick by fragile brick. Gone. You could almost feel Rasheeda's mind racing through memories, excuses, late nights, strange instincts, moments she probably ignored because the truth would have been too painful to face. That's the brutal thing about betrayal. Once the lie is exposed, the past starts rearranging itself in real time. The things that once seemed small begin to glow in your memory, like warning signs you wish you had not overlooked. At first, she rejected it. Of course she did. Because when pain is too big, denial becomes the body's first defense. It buys the heart a few seconds, a few breaths, a few precious moments before the collapse. But Jasmine didn't stop with the photo. She said the alleged mother had reached out directly. She said there were private conversations. She said there had been a test. She even played a voice memo from a woman claiming she had kept quiet for too long and could not stay silent anymore. And that is when this stopped feeling like gossip and started feeling like disaster. Rasheeda stood up. She could not absorb it sitting down. Some truths are so violent they force the body into motion. She wasn't just angry, she was cornered by a past she thought she had survived and a present she could no longer explain away. And then, as if the moment weren't already unbearable enough, the door opened. Her mother walked in. Now the room had witnesses not just to a scandal but to a wound. And there is something uniquely heartbreaking about a mother seeing her daughter break in real time. Not because she has never seen pain before, but because she knows this pain. She recognizes it. She has probably warned against it, feared it, prayed over it. The shock turned instantly into outrage. Because what do you even call it when one woman is left publicly carrying the shame of a man's hidden life? What do you call it when the same family is dragged back into humiliation again, only deeper this time? Miss Charlene's anger came from more than the moment. It came from accumulated disappointment, from watching her daughter suffer, from seeing the same cycle return wearing a different face. In Rasheeda, she finally cracked. Not in the polished way people crack on television, not in a cinematic, graceful way. She broke like real people break. Her words stumbled. Her face fell apart. Her spirit looked tired. She wasn't just reacting to that day. She was reacting to every day that led to it. That is what made the moment hit so hard. It wasn't just about a secret child. It was about emotional depletion. It was about public embarrassment. It was about the unbearable weight of having to be strong one more time when you have nothing left in reserve. Then came the next insult. The footage leaked. Before there was space to process, before there was room to breathe, before truth could even settle inside the people living it, the internet got hold of it. And once social media catches the scent of scandal, compassion is usually the first casualty. Headlines exploded, blogs ran wild, comment sections lit up. Everyone had an opinion, everyone had a joke, everyone had a theory. But for the woman at the center of it, this was not entertainment. This was not tea. This was not content. This was her life being shattered in public again. And while the world reacted, one person was missing. Kirk. No statement, no appearance, no immediate accountability, just absence. That absence spoke louder than any denial ever could. Because when a crisis hits and the person responsible disappears, it leaves everyone else to sit in the wreckage alone. And in situations like this, silence is never neutral. Silence becomes its own kind of confession, its own kind of abandonment. Meanwhile, more alleged evidence began to surface. Claims of hidden support, claims of private arrangements, claims that what looked shocking on camera may have only scratched the surface of what had been kept in the dark. The story was growing bigger by the hour, and with every new detail, one question became harder to ignore. How long had this really been going on? That question matters because betrayal is not just the lie you discover today. It is the timeline behind it, the duration, the effort, the planning, the repeated choice to let someone live in a false reality while you manage the truth in secret. That is what makes these moments so devastating. It is not only that someone was unfaithful, it is that they made a home inside deception. They built routines inside it. They carried on conversations, family moments, public appearances, maybe even declarations of loyalty, all while another truth existed somewhere else. That kind of damage doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes reality. Then came the live stream. The alleged mother went public, saying she had not wanted drama, had not wanted the spotlight, had tried to stay quiet. But according to her claims, watching a false version of events continue to play out publicly while her child remained hidden pushed her to speak. And once she started talking, the internet did what it always does. It turned human pain into a live spectacle. Screenshots were dissected. Voice clips were replayed. People debated who knew what, who should have spoken sooner, who was lying, who was guilty, who was pretending, who was protecting themselves. But underneath all the commentary was one woman sitting with the unbearable reality that her instincts had not betrayed her. The relationship had. And that may be the saddest part of all. Because when trust is damaged once, a person can still convince themselves healing is possible. They can tell themselves people change. They can tell themselves the worst is over. They can choose forgiveness, not because they are naive, but because they want peace more than vengeance. But when the wound opens again, the pain changes shape. It is no longer just heartbreak. It becomes humiliation mixed with grief. It becomes anger tied to regret. It becomes the sickening realization that the version of safety you fought to rebuild may have never truly existed. That is why Rasheeda's response mattered so much. She was no longer willing to let cameras feast on her pain without terms. She wanted truth, directly, clearly, without edits, without dodging, without another performance disguised as explanation. And honestly, who could blame her? At some point, surviving is not enough. At some point, a person deserves clarity. They deserve honesty that is not dragged out of someone under pressure. They deserve the dignity of truth before the world gets hold of it. They deserve to stop being the last person informed about the collapse of their own reality. What made this entire situation so gripping was not just the scandal itself. It was the emotional anatomy of it, the exhaustion in Rasheeda's face, the shakiness in Jasmine's delivery, the fury of a mother witnessing her child be wounded again, the absence of the man at the center, the speed of the leak, the brutality of public reaction, the haunting familiarity of history repeating itself. That is what turned this from a messy moment into something unforgettable. Because people were not just watching drama. They were watching what betrayal looks like when it has had years to evolve. They were watching the cost of silence. They were watching what happens when secrets outgrow the walls built to contain them. And perhaps the deepest wound in all of this is the one nobody talks about enough. Betrayal doesn't only break trust in another person. It can break trust in your own judgment. It can make you question your memory, your patience, your forgiveness, even your hope. It can make you wonder whether love blinded you, or whether loyalty simply kept you standing in a burning house too long. That is why this story hit such a nerve. Not because it was sensational, but because it was familiar. Too many people know what it feels like to sense something is wrong and stay quiet because the truth feels too expensive. Too many people know what it means to keep choosing peace, while life keeps handing them proof that peace has not chosen them back. Too many people know the humiliation of finding out publicly what should have been confessed privately. And maybe that is the real lesson here. Not every apology is transformation. Not every reconciliation is healing. Not every silence is peace. Sometimes silence is just the hallway where another secret is waiting. So now the question is bigger than who said what, who posted what, or who finally comes forward next. The real question is this: what happens when a woman who has been asked to endure everything finally decides she has endured enough? Because if there is one thing more powerful than scandal, more powerful than a lie, more powerful than a man trying to outrun the truth, it is a woman who no longer fears what she might lose by walking away. And maybe that is where this story truly begins. Not with the photo, not with the leak, not with the live stream, but with the moment pain stops making someone smaller and starts making them clear. So tell me what you think. Was Jasmine wrong for speaking up when she did? Or was late truth still better than silence? Did Rasheeda already know in her spirit before the proof appeared? And if Kirk really has been hiding more than anyone knew, is there any coming back from that? Drop your thoughts below, because this story is no longer just about scandal. It is about betrayal, survival, and the exact moment a broken heart decides it will not be broken the same way twice.